Good day. It's Dan here. I'm going to talk to you about some morph targets and facial rigging. So we've got a head, kind of a simple head, not a whole lot to it. This will just get us started. A couple things to mention the first way. It's nice to zero things out. It's also nice to reset your X form just in case you've done some scaling along the way. And that could be something as simple as that and collapsing it down. So we should be ready to go. We will be using a turbo smooth later on, but for now we can see how things look by giving a NURM subdivision on this. Turn it up. So it's kind of a simple looking head, but it's great for people getting into facial rigging and morph targets because there's not a whole lot to do with it in terms of making these morph targets. So we will make just a few basic ones to start. So I've got to copy this a couple times. Okay, and the way these morph targets are going to work is that they have to be the same poly count and vert number as the base head. So I'm going to just call this head base, and these ones are also called head base, but I'm going to name them a couple of different things here. So this one's going to be called open. We'll call this one closed. Wide and narrow. Okay, and eventually these four will be tied to one controller. Okay, so I need these contrasting movements. So if this one is moving up and down, if this one's going wide open, let's say we look at the top lip, and this one's going to be wide, so we're opening it up wide. This one is going to be closed, so we're moving it down. So we have two contrasting motions. This one, we've got wide and narrow. Okay, so we've got going left, and then we have it going right, so going in and out. So another couple of good contrasting motions. And when we've got this controller that moves up and down and left and right, we'll be able to blend with these quite easily. So these contrasting motions with this type of setup is a really strong thing to do. We have to do it this way. All right, so first thing, I'll throw the morpher on here. Let's see here, morpher. And the morpher, if I zoom in on this, that is not a zoom, there is zoom. Okay, a couple things to watch for in here. Automatically reload targets. I definitely want to keep that on because that will allow me to edit morph targets later on. And then, if I had morph targets in here, I would click reload all morph targets. Right now I don't have any, and that's fine. Really, that's about all you need to know in here. We can get into progressive morphs later on, and all this is a matter of several morph targets going through here. And when you go from 0 to 100 in that 0 to 100% in that morpher, it's going to run through those morph targets. So it's kind of a neat way to do curves when we do morphs. Usually only a morph will be on a linear type of track, so it'll go from point A to point B and not go in an arc. Well, that's what these progressive morphs do for us. Anyhow, we're not going to be doing that for this. Just thought I'd give you a quick rundown on that. To load these in, I'll select, and then I'll go to load multiple targets. And here's all the targets that I've created already. So I'll just load those up. You can see how those come in to being over here. So the first one is going to be open, so I need to open up this mouth. While you're working on these morphs, make sure that you've got volume on the lips. These lips are quite thick, okay, so we want to retain that volume as much as we can. So for now, I'm going to just move what I call the primary edges here. This primary shape being the internal polygons and verts. Okay, so this being your primary shape. Let me go over to verts instead. Okay, if we talk about secondary shape, okay, if I grow this out, you can see these other pieces out here. Let's say we'll do it this way. Okay, the edge on the outside of the perimeter here, this would be kind of your secondary pieces. Now these ones won't have as much movement as the primary. But you still need to have that gradual type of movement when you make this go. Going farther than that, you might have a little bit of movement on the outside. Okay, but it's still things that you should consider. Farther than that, and it's going to be, I'd be surprised if it would be moving too much. When we do something like a jaw open, we will be moving this area down here as well. So that's something that we have to watch for. But most of the movements we're going to be doing are just going to be up in and around this area. Okay, so we're opening the jaw on this. So I'm just moving this up, moving this down. Okay, notice I'm crunching in on this, so I'm not too worried about that just yet. I'm going to be moving that. Let me undo this here for a second. Okay, can't forget the back of the lips. Okay, and I know that's what I did up on top here too, so let me fix that. Okay, so that's not very wide, but I guess it's somewhat wide enough. I think I need to drop the bottom ones a little bit more. And I'll grab the ones in the front here too. If you need to, you could use soft selection on this. Okay, and maybe drop the fall off. And then that'll allow you to move maybe a few more. I'll angle it a little bit and drop it. So that's not too bad. About these secondary edges, we have to make sure to watch for that. So I'm going to lift this up to try to retain some of that volume. Lift these up too. And maybe even these ones a slight amount. So if I'm moving this 100% being the primary shape, the secondary maybe 50% or maybe 30%, this one maybe 5%. So it's just got a little bit of movement on it. Okay. Quick way to see if this is working for us and see where the areas are that might need some tweaking is to use some animation. So I'm going to turn on auto key, and I'm just shortening my timeline here. At about 15, let's say halfway through, I'm going to crank this to 100. And then at, I'm using the wrong one here. Let me crank open to 100 because I'm using open. Okay, and then at 30 I'll go back to 0 and I'll turn off auto key. So if I press play, I can see what's happening. Now, as I'm looking at this, I have to start looking for areas that need more movement. I have 0 movement on the corners of the lips, or very, very little. I have really 0 movement here. The thing what happens when we open our mouth, this way goes up, this way goes in. It's squash and stretch, right? We stretch it up and we squash it in. So we have to have that as part of it. If I look at the jaw's got a decent amount of movement. There's some stuff happening here, but there's nothing here. So I'd want to get a bit more on that side. So because we have automatically reload targets on, I can go to this object, my morpher, and I can move it down and look what happens to my actual base head. Okay, so I can drop this down a little bit and then press play, just to see how it's going to move. So that already looks a little bit better. This one could probably move a little bit as well. So I'll grab the ones right below that and just drop it a tiny bit. And press play. See how things are moving here. Okay, now these ones I want to move inwards. Okay, so these I can grab these. So I'm just grabbing all the corner bits. Okay, and I'll use scale, and I'll just scale it in a little bit. Maybe even drop these down slightly. Press play and see how it's working. Maybe pulling it forward slightly. So that's not looking too bad. Okay. Better yet, what we can do is throw a turbo smooth on this guy. I'll just put it up on top. And 2 iterations should be fine. Press play and see how it's looking. Okay, so everything is moving pretty good around here. We can move on to the next one. Okay, so this one being the closed, I have to make sure that these lips close, obviously, but with the low poly,